There is a little secret you need to know about me. Before this channel, I already made 4 different YouTube channels. And all of them, they're dead. Every single time I had a moment where I sat down and had a very reasonable conversation with myself that would explain why I should stop making videos. My life is actually good right now. Why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself in a struggle? This isn't really what I want to bring to people anyway. Why do you keep persisting? Or, this is a good one, my audience doesn't really watch YouTube anyway, so why do you even try? And at that moment, every reason sounded very true. Every reason felt like clarity. It was like something I could let go. I could lose some weight off my shoulders. But it took me years to realize which pattern was actually playing underneath that kind of behavior. I wasn't quitting because the idea was wrong. I was quitting because persistency and starting up was hard. And here's the part that still messes with me in my head. Because I made 4 different channels and all of them I quit. But the idea behind it never left. I always said, even to my girlfriend like 6 years ago, I want to create a YouTube channel. And the topics always changed a bit. The YouTube channel was always prevalent. But here is the thing. Planning isn't doing. I was just rehearsing a version of commitment that never asked anything of me. I didn't have to put effort into it. And it always felt like preparation. It wasn't avoidance. Hell no. I was preparing for the future of creating videos. And I needed to prepare it so good and so clearly in my head that I was just stuck in that same loop of preparing different channels. Enough about me, because I think you have the same kind of patterns. And for me, that's YouTube. Maybe it can be something else for you. Maybe it's a business plan you've written down for 11 times or restructured your meal plan already for 10 times without actually making the meals. Or the conversation that you have in your mind and you planned it for such a long time, but the real conversation you never really had. And maybe like me, you convinced yourself you're on the right track. You told yourself a very convincing story about why now isn't the time or why you shouldn't do it. Why it's actually wise to procrastinate. And I think here's a question worth sitting with for a while. When an idea won't die, but you also won't act on it, what is actually happening there? I want to find out. And for a long time I watched videos about willpower. You just have to do the work. You just have to want it more. Try harder, push through it, go into that struggle. But this explanation never felt right to me. It felt like I was forcing myself to do stuff that I actually like. It assumes that willpower, you just have to refill it. It's just like, oh, take some willpower here. Here's a pill of willpower and everything will be fixed with your willpower. Just push through it. Willpower is like your fuel. Okay, but where does that fuel come from? Can someone tell me? So I took a look at it differently. Is willpower really something that the brain is generating, or is it channeled from an external source? Because those are very different things. If it's generated by your brain, like a muscle, we have to flex and train, then it makes sense that the advice of trying harder is working. And then I'm just defective in making my own willpower, I guess. But this wasn't working for me. This willpower that I had to invent or convince myself, that was actually the problem. I had to convince myself to keep going. But if it's channeled, then willpower isn't really the engine. It's more like a valve. And what's actually driving your willpower is something underneath it. Belief, desire, fear, identity. The valve doesn't create the pressure. It's an emotion behind it that drives willpower. So the willpower itself is like the valve that decides wherever the pressure can flow through. And this is a total different way of looking at willpower. And this is where it gets really interesting for me, because it lines up almost perfectly with what Carl Jung describes. Carl Jung spent his whole lifetime, his whole career, mapping the idea that we don't have a unified self. It's like fractured into different archetypes. And a lot of what looks like a lack of willpower is actually just a conflict between all the different parts taking over in you. So you have all those personas or identities that take the lead. So it's actually your archetypes that comes forward in yourself, and they want all a specific thing. They are all fighting for one thing. Let's put my own 4 dead YouTube channels through that lens. Because once I did that, instead of looking at it like a failure and started looking at it like a pattern that keeps returning, there was kind of a logic to it. So one part of me really wanted the channel to exist. I really wanted to be seen. I wanted to build. I wanted to help people that think in a way like I do. And that was kind of the persona or the person in the foreground. In Jung's words, that's the self. It's kind of the organizing center of my own psyche. It's the part that brings all the pieces together and is oriented towards wholeness, to becoming what you really are destined to be in the world. But another part, and this gets tricky, the part I didn't really like to look at in myself, and that's what they call the shadow self or the shadow part. That part of me was afraid. I was actually terrified to be visible in front of so many people. And not just that, I was afraid to fail again publicly. And this fear is rooted in an illusion of failure. And what I didn't understand about that is the shadow part in yourself, it doesn't say loudly, hey, here I am, this is your shadow part. No, it doesn't do that. That's why it's called the shadow. It can't just say to you, wait, stop, I'm actually scared for making a video and put myself publicly on the internet. No, it doesn't announce that. So what it does is it borrows a disguise, and it's very sneaky. It's super sneaky. It puts up, like we call it, a persona, a mask, if you like to call it that way. It's the mask that I show to the world. It's the reasonable, the self-aware, the wise, the growth-minded version of myself. And for YouTube, it's also very tricky, because you don't want to show yourself in a vulnerable way. This is one of the hardest things to do in front of a camera. You're there alone with a camera and you're talking in a vulnerable way. This is what I needed to learn, because I wanted to show up as this persona constantly. This creates pressure on yourself. You are masking something that is not your true self. It's a disguise. If you would be your true self, you would say, actually, I'm afraid in front of a camera. I'm afraid to speak my truth. This is what's true to yourself. So that doesn't create this pressure. But the shadow self transforms it in a disguise and lets you show the version that it thinks it's protected from. So it's gonna say things, for example, like, I think you hear me already coming, you are struggling, you don't need to struggle. Why you don't just quit? It's fine to quit, you have a chill life. Or, you have changed your mind, you just go into another direction and that's fine, it's okay. Oh, but look, you grow already so much and you learned already so much from this experience. You can let it be. You've done it. You accomplished it already. Don't make a struggle for nothing. Wait, this is not aligned with your values. What are you doing? What this shadow self is doing is it's giving you just an exit. It gives you a safe exit, and sometimes there's a valuable reasoning behind it. You can actually really understand. It felt more like a wise insight that felt justified through wisdom. If you ever talked yourself out of something and you have the feeling that this reasoning was airtight. It was clean. It was so smooth, almost too clean, too convenient. Now, that's worth to take a look at. Because probably there's something shady going on, literally. And it's not always wrong. Your reasonings are not wrong. That's not the point. It is you are bypassing a feeling, an emotion with a reasoning. That's what's wrong. And believe me, fear is a fluent liar. It can talk yourself out of something with wise words of wisdom. It's like suddenly you become this bright philosopher and you think, yeah, that's me, that's right. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes there is value in that. Sometimes this protection mechanism, there is some truth to it. And that's what makes it so difficult to distinguish it from what's real and what's fabricated by your shadow part. Here's the thing that took me a very long time to see clearly in front of me. The idea that kept coming back, the YouTube channel, I used to think that was my personality trait. It was stubbornness. It was a weird obsession-like state. The thing that kept resurrecting the idea and that it was constantly in the back of my mind was going always around it, not going through the front door, because that door was heavily guarded by my shadow part. And this reframes just the whole story. This obsession was actually not the unhealthy part. So let's go back to the actual question. Is willpower a real thing? Because willpower as fuel assumes that there's only one agent, one goal, and a limited tank, like a fuel tank, that you spend. Fuel doesn't refill itself by activity. It wasn't how much willpower I had left. Not at all. It was all about that part in me that was controlling. Who was in control? Fear and the self are constantly battling with each other, and this is the tension it creates that creates paralysis. And then you are described as, you don't have willpower. And then when suddenly something shifts in you and the parts stop fighting, and what you notice then is that the energy you have, or the willpower, what we call, was always right there. It was just not released because the mechanism of the fear and yourself were fighting with each other constantly to take control. And that's why just try harder is really the worst advice you can ever give. Like, what the fuck even? It doesn't make any sense. And some people, and I have a lot of respect for them, they just brute force it and they never take a look at themselves. Because maybe they do something out of fear. Maybe that's their internal driver. But then when the fear resolves at a later stage in your life, this internal drive is not there anymore. So what you're gonna do? Where's your willpower then? Which means that the actual question was not about how can I achieve more willpower? It was more like, which part of me is right now in charge? And what is it protecting me from? Don't get me wrong, I don't have a clear answer for that myself. I'm still figuring that out, surely, but slowly. So every time now that the voice shows up and is explaining something to me why I should stop, I try to take a look at it and look at my shadow self and say, well, I think I'm afraid. This helped me really a lot. And if you liked this video, please do share, like or subscribe. This would help the channel's growth a lot. Thank you for watching the video and have a nice, wonderful day.